The Port Podcast with Craig Bell-Estabrooks.
Welcome, everyone, to the latest edition of the Port Podcast. We have a wonderful special guest. Every guest is special, but this is an extra special one today. We have Kathryn Lockhart, the Executive Director of the McKenna Institute. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the kind words. And I'm so happy to be here on this sunny day, and particularly in the crew lounge here. I feel very privileged to be here.
Isn't that, you referred to this earlier as our secret Air Canada lounge, and it is.
Yep. I've only ever been on the outside. Now I'm going to tell my kids I've been on the inside. They'll be very jealous.
Well, it's a big part of the cruise industry here because it's a place where the crew can get away, disconnect from their day-to-day responsibilities when they're on break and really be with their families despite the time difference and proximity.
No, I think it's fantastic. Great view. So I would join a crew just to hang out here.
There you go. Wonderful endorsement. Yeah. Well, you have had a great career, and we want to get into this today and all your love for New Brunswick. Tell us a little bit about your new role, because it's still relatively new with the McKenna Institute.
Gosh, so I joined the McKenna Institute. I'm in week 11. So
week
double digits, and had the real privilege of joining a fantastic team as the executive director. So what I'm getting to look at what's been accomplished in chapter 1 with the McKenna Institute. And then we're together reconnecting with New Brunswickers to make sure we understand how to focus our efforts for chapter 2. But digital transformation, that's sort of the name of the game.
Yeah.
And when Frank and Adrian Olford, the original executive director, kicked this off, they had the hard job of really standing this up and building the plane as they flew it. So now it's a real privilege to come in and experience, learn what's happened, look at the growth, and look forward to chapter 2.
So why you in this moment? What led you to look at this opportunity, pursue it, get it, and be so excited about it?
I feel like it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. It's a moment in time where technology, where New Brunswick, where the world is changing. And I'm very nerdy and passionate about New Brunswick. There's no secret about that. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a way to actually help shape the province and look into the future in a major way. I'm very selfish in that I want my kids to grow up in a province where they can see themselves working for a Smart Skin or an Eigen Innovation or working at the port. I grew up in Carleton County. I grew up believing I needed to leave New Brunswick to have a career. I didn't have a potato farm myself in my family. So I did. I left the province for 16 years, but more than happy to be back and looking at the potential ahead for us.
So we've had a lot of great leaders from around the world on this podcast. Tell us a little bit about those 16 years away and that journey, what that looked like for you.
Sure. So when I left the nest in Bath, New Brunswick, I went to Fredericton and was in the second graduating class at Renaissance College, which is now the School of Leadership Studies. And what a great experience. I was fortunate enough, I got accepted to Harvard Business School directly after. So told I'm the youngest person that's gone there. So I was 21 and could barely drink in the US when I went down.
That's a challenge in college down there. Yeah,
it's sort of par for the course. So, but a really great experience. And then came back to Toronto, where I worked for Knightsbridge Human Capital Solutions at the time for about 5 years. During that time, I moved to Germany because I happened to meet this German during business school and decided I needed to be in Europe for personal reasons. So lived in Germany, but worked in Toronto and flew back and forth for about 4 years.
Wow, that's a commute.
I was very jet lagged. And it was pre-kids, so you could sort of manage the traveling. And then when I stepped back from that organization, and still to this day, that was David Shaw was the CEO, one of my favorite humans I've ever worked with. I started my own company, and it was a spectacular failure. So it was a startup, and I did it with a co-founder. But it's where I learned how to sell. That was a big step in my career, just being brave enough to put yourself out there. I mean, cold calling, lead gen. It's like a full contact sport that doesn't feel good. So that's where some of that started.
I want to pick up on a point you just made because someone mentioned it on a previous podcast, and it's something I think about all the time. as New Brunswickers, and I think there's something in the DNA of Atlantic Canada that we don't talk about the failures as part of the success journey. Because I've had the opportunity to study in different educational institutions around North America as well. And when you hear people's stories, they wear the downs as much as the ups.
Yeah.
And they love sharing those pieces of their story because it's what made them who they are today. Do you find that feeling that I feel that we just don't talk about that enough?
We don't. I couldn't agree more. We don't talk about failure enough. It should be part of a natural conversation, especially in the space that I work in. Previous to this, I was in the startup space. So failure is 90% of what happens.
Right.
And now we're really focused on tech adoption, digital transformation in the province. There will also be failure and learning. I think it is part of being humble is part of who we are, and we take great pride in that, but it often translates into, but I don't want to tell people if I failed, which isn't helpful.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. It's fascinating. And I think, we're going to get into this later in the podcast, but as we dream big as New Brunswickers and try to reshape our province, figuring out where we fit in Canada's new journey of trade diversification and innovation and productivity, there's going to be a lot of success, I believe, in this province, but there's going to be bumpy roads to get there. Yeah. The Premier last Thursday in her State of a Province, Premier Holt mentioned this, and I think was very open and honest and authentic in a way I haven't seen out of leadership. But we need to start talking about the fact that in a path to success, there's going to be bumps. Yeah, they're going to hurt.
A lot. And I think it's one of the things we're focused on at the Institute as well. We're discovering right now, because we're engaged in what we're calling a listening tour. So reconnecting with New Brunswickers to understand where are the biggest opportunities for us to refocus. And what we're hearing is that there is a lot that we're not talking about. I'm hearing big feelings when it comes to talking about technology, tech adoption, AI. And I think we're not talking about how difficult it is for adults to learn and adopt new skills to become productive, right? We talk a lot about productivity, but how difficult this is for adults to embrace new tools in a way that they may not understand yet.
It's almost overwhelming. I think we're bombarded on a daily basis with news and new applications and, companies looking at AI and how they're going to transform everything. I think there's just a natural fear factor to change. Yep. And then it's throw in the pace of change. And you've got two fear factors that are coming at most people.
Yeah. There's a Harvard Business School professor that I love to follow, and his name is Dr. Karim Lakhani. He has this great TED Talk. Are you familiar with his?
Well, I did. I obviously didn't do my MBA like you, but I did the program for leadership development. I had him as one of my professors.
Gosh, that's awesome. Yeah. So he has this TED Talk that I would encourage everybody to check out, but he talks about AI tools needing to be put through clinical trials. And it is so grounding because you sort of, in the most basic sense, we don't fully know the dosage. We don't really know the short-term side effects. We don't really know the long-term side effects. So what does Harvard do? They clear out the noise, they do the research and apply it to industry and figure out the answers. Yeah. So it was really grounding for me in that they went into companies and they had a sort of a placebo company that didn't get any new AI tools, and they had a team that got AI tools. They measured the quality of their work, how fast they did it, and how much work they could do. It was improved by 40%. Wow. However, if those same tools were given to another team and applied incorrectly, it was disastrous. So the education around AI tools and then working back to even basic tech adoption, we need to understand that in order for New Brunswick companies to really embrace the potential of AI, we have important work to do around education, around the change management piece. The people process for me is big and missing from the conversation that the McKenna Institute, we're going to focus a lot more on.
That's wonderful. I mean, the human element of all this needs to be discussed more. And it's great that you're focusing the McKenna Institute on that. Yeah. In the listening tour, it's been very loud. I actually haven't stumbled across a market pain point like this in a long time. Okay. Where I had assumed smaller companies would be having this pain, but maybe larger companies wouldn't. That's not the case.
We're talking to larger companies who have heard, oh, we're going to look at how do you actually help the change management part of tech adoption within a larger organization? And it just sort of comes up in conversation and they're like, that's what we need. Yeah. That's what we want. Yeah. So we're starting to take steps in that direction and figuring out what's the answer to it. Right. Talking about it is the first step for sure. Yeah. Making it a normalized conversation. Mm-hmm. And, I give a lot of examples around this. When I moved to Germany for the first time, I didn't speak German. So everything was suddenly hard. Even ordering a coffee was hard. So I ordered less coffee. And so you're like, on a Tuesday morning, I just can't feel dumb today. I can't even have the most basic of conversations. And we need to understand that's a similar experience to adults being asked to use AI in their job. They just don't want to feel dumb. And that's a human reaction that's very normal, but one that we're not supporting in the right way yet.
That is the best analogy I have heard to date. It's so relatable.
Yeah.
Anyone that may not have moved to Germany, the bold move you did, but have traveled abroad, know how overwhelming it is the first time you go into a coffee shop or you try to order and the whole day feels
like you lose your confidence and you can't quite communicate the way you want, but yet you're expected to work in that language.
Exceptionally challenging.
Yeah. The other point that we're looking at the Institute, Craig, around tech and tech adoption, because that's where we're really excited about for chapter 2, is the level of tech literacy when we're talking to people. We often start talking about AI, but then you look under the hood and you recognize, oh, they're not ready for AI. They're at a stage where an ERP system that's very custom and they have difficulty changing features is in fact the bottleneck in their business. So they're not ready to talk about AI and learn about AI and apply it. They're at a different level. And I think the analogy I use there is my daughter who's 12. She uses Duolingo to improve her German skills.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's really good. She's on like 300 days plus. So she's learning, her literacy is increasing. But then when we talk to my in-laws on the weekend, who are German and don't speak English, she's like, she doesn't quite have the reflex yet to have a fluid conversation. So she can't yet use German productively. Same with technology. So a single webinar on AI won't get you to a point of, I got a reflex to use AI.
Right.
And let alone use it until my company is now productive or my role within the organization, I'm now more productive than I was. We have to understand there's time that it will take to go through from literacy to adoption to actually being productive.
That's fascinating. Well, I can't wait to hear more as you unveil the McKenna strategy. But I want to learn a little bit more about brought you back to New Brunswick. I deviated there. I'm sorry, but you were talking about your startup venture. What were the next steps that led you back here?
Gosh, so did my startup venture, that failed. Great learning experience though. And then I joined a startup in Munich, so also in Germany. That was fantastic. My favorite part about that, just from a personal development perspective, was that I could close deals in German by then. Took time. Again, that was like 5-6 years into living in overseas, but that was a great milestone for me. And then our daughter was born in Germany, and we recognized we'd like the option to come back to Canada. And so we ended up in Newfoundland for 5 years for my husband's training. And then we knew we always wanted to come back to New Brunswick. Right. So we did 5 years in Newfoundland, 1 year in Winnipeg, and moved back here during the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We had planned that. So it was it was planned before the pandemic. But it was so fantastic to come back to St. John. My mom grew up here. So in my childhood, we always came here visiting my grandparents. Oh. So it was a really warm spot for us to be. I knew it as a kid. Like we'd come down and visit the port when the cruise ships were in, and we always wanted to know when the aquatic center was open, that type of thing. Yeah. But as an adult with my own children, I didn't have a business network. I just knew it from visiting my grandparents. Right. So it was really familiar, but new at the same time.
So what has it been like, kind of reintroducing yourself to New Brunswickers, having been away so long?
It's been fast. As you know, networking here, New Brunswickers are so genuinely friendly. Yeah. I think the people are a competitive advantage. We're way too humble about it. But I think if we can embrace how good we are at having authentic relationships, listening to people, selling. We got to get better at selling. But if you can build those relationships like New Brunswickers know how to do very naturally, this is where you want to do business. So It's been very fast.
Yeah, we've often say at the port, if we could take quotations, and we've had a lot of these folks on the podcast about how they perceive St. John, New Brunswick, the investment climate. We're talking the DP Worlds, the CPKC rails. They can work anywhere in the world and love here.
Yeah.
If we could take their sentiment and believe in it a little bit more ourselves, we'd be much further along.
Yeah. And what a great example. I mean, the port, this is like Grand Central Station for, the eastern part of North America on so many levels. And if you're seeing that from folks coming here, we got to trust it.
Well, I've learned something new today about your skills in German, because the largest container line at the Port of St. John, who's fully invested in this program, is Hapag-Lloyd.
Yeah.
And they, very, very prominent German company that I'm sure you saw when you were over there.
Very much so. Yeah. They're everywhere.
Their orange boxes color our waterfront.
Yeah, you can see them across the
harbor
harbor now.
Behind right now.
Yeah, very recognizable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about the McKenna Institute and how you're trying to position it with the province at the crossroads it's at right now.
Yeah. So I see when Frank McKenna, those of you watching this will know him even better than I do, very, very much so. When he envisioned setting this up, he recognizes that digital transformation can be a real enabling factor for economic development, for social movement. Tech can be a real equality setter in the province. So his energy, enthusiasm, together with Adrian, really helped put the wheels in motion for what we're really excited about. To me, it's also one of those things where if we invest in it the right way, and what we're learning is that if we can get folks to embrace the learning part, the change management part of tech adoption, it could be one of the biggest differentiators in our province in comparison to the rest of the country or the continent, if you will.
Yeah, no question. I had the opportunity last week to spend a little bit of time with Premiers Ford and Holt from New Brunswick, and it is clear, Canada is changing.
Yep.
Trade relationships are shifting. Geopolitics is in uncharted territories.
Yeah.
And we need to figure out as Canadians what our role is in the world.
Yeah.
And I think Prime Minister Carney began that process at Davos, talking and giving that very impactful speech.
Yeah.
But equally, we need to figure out in New Brunswick how we are going to fit in the Canadian landscape and how we want to play globally too.
Yeah.
And I think we really need to have some tough conversations and some real conversations. And I think you and the McKenna Institute need to be a big part of that. That's why I was so pleased you joined this. What is your perspective on this ever-changing Canadian global landscape?
Well, it's fast, as you had said earlier. It's fast. Certainly in my lifetime, don't remember a time when day to day felt so ambiguous in terms of what's going to happen in the news we don't know. That's difficult to plan if you're leading a business. That's difficult to plan if you're in cyber education. That's difficult to plan if you're a grade 3 teacher. And I say those audiences because we do different work with those audiences within the Institute itself. So the one thing we probably can control is how fast we can move around adopting technology and building partnerships we do trust, building talent that we have no matter what happens in the world, talent that is needed and responsive to what industry needs. So cyber talent is something we're really hearing in the market, is a place we're going to start focusing on. We have exciting announcement coming up around cyber talent. So really leveraging the post-secondary institutions across the province. We're a bilingual province. And how do we make those connections with industry needs in a world that is changing so rapidly? So cybersecurity, AI, we really need to narrow in on being responsive to industry. So we have an opportunity to help build some of those bridges in the province and take a leadership position.
It's fascinating, just as you're speaking, the thing that popped up in my mind is, how do we let go of the past in a respectful way,
Mm-hmm.
still honoring the history of the province and the people that came before us, but how do we let the past go to focus on what is clearly an opportunity and a crossroads for the province and the country?
That's a great question. I think for some folks, it might be hard. And throughout this listening tour, one of the comments someone made to me was, my kids and her children were all in university. They said they don't have a problem with technology, with AI. They don't have much to learn, to embrace. They are the future. They're set up for the future in a very positive way in terms of their skill set, their comfort level with technology. We have an adult problem. And I thought that was really interesting. It really focused the thinking, because letting go, to your point, that's not going to be difficult for everybody, but it will certainly be difficult for the next, let's call it 10 years, for the majority of the working population. We had this conversation yesterday on our team saying, wouldn't it be amazing if the Institute was so successful in helping with tech adoption that in 10 years we shut the Institute down? That we were no longer needed.
Right.
Because technology became an instinct for teachers, for industry they could trust. They could hire cyber talent in combination with the post-secondary training, as well as new Canadians who come here with talent. But it's sometimes hard for industry to qualify. But let's get them through a program that does exactly that.
Right.
As we look at different sectors, we're looking at how can we help sectors like the forestry sector with technology, proper adoption with specific initiatives. If they've got that down pat in 10 years, great, our job is done.
Right.
Like, we want technology to be an extension of what we do in everything we do. And that will be harder for adults. But I think if we have the right conversations, put the right support in place for that safe learning, proper failure conversations, we're at least moving in the right direction.
Yeah, what we find in the port and the maritime industry around technology, because there's a lot of it in the movement of vessels now, looking at weather patterns and smart, kind of smart buoy we have in the harbor that can detect when a storm, is arising that's going to cause a vessel movement to be delayed or to look a little different. The thing that has really struck me in my 15 years here is you can have platforms and the best technology, and we use a little bit of AI, and some of our partners do now. But at the heart of it all, when it's multi-stakeholder, is trust. And you said the word trust so many times in your answers. How can partners build trust while still embracing technology at the same time? What has to come first?
I think because I'm a New Brunswicker, maybe I'm such a fan of building those real relationships and also understanding what technology can accomplish for us. So we hear a lot of people thinking that technology is like a wizard and will fix everything. It can't. Even AI has limitations that people need to be aware of. It doesn't have judgment. So it can't discern if, ChatGPT or any, LLMs that you're using within a different model. If it doesn't have the right input, it might miss some nuances that are critical from a judgment perspective. AI also doesn't have ambition. So if you are using technology as a tool, leveraging, it can do certain tasks for you, but you still have to drive the ambition through trustful relationships, through vision, motivation. All of that still comes from the people in New Brunswick, the partners that you work with through the port. That all has to be there, but balanced with leveraging technology for what it is designed for, to ensure the most productive operations in a lot of what we do. I think if we can strike the perfect balance in New Brunswick, we will definitely be leading North America as we navigate through this trade diversification opportunity that is now in front of us.
Yeah, I love that. So I'm going to take us into uncharted territories, because you shared before we started that you've got a port story, but I don't know anything about this story. So lead us in your port story. Okay.
Well, I am a huge fan of St. John, always have been. It is such a warm city, full of character, full of kind people. And my grandparents, visiting them up on Douglas Avenue, that's where they lived, they would bring us down. My grandparents would bring us down. We would meet the cruise ships back in the day when they gave roses to the ladies getting off sometimes. The other thing that was interesting from a historical perspective is that during the war, my grandparents and many other families in the area would host sailors, British sailors whose vessels came here. There would be merchant ships that came here to sort of protect some of the supply chain ships during the war. And when the ships were docked on the port, the crew, instead of having a crew lounge, they would be entertained and stay with the families. And there was a relationship built with a gentleman named George Copus. So he would have been maybe 17, 18 at the time, and stayed with my family. And for literally 70 years, they maintained that relationship. So
That's incredible.
my husband and I, we went over to London to visit them. We've all spent time with them in London. They've been back to visit. So the port was that connector in a very unique situation when the world was having a very difficult moment. But it shows that those relationships with the port connection that they couldn't have planned have lasted generations. And I love learning about those historical moments that connect families with ports, connects them with other countries. It's fantastic.
Well, I can't think of a better story to end this very special podcast on. Thank you so much for sharing your family's history, about your leadership journey. I think we're very fortunate to have you back in New Brunswick, leading an incredibly important organization with the McKenna Institute. And I think the best is yet to come.
Thank you. And thank you for your leadership. Everybody looks forward to hearing from you, Craig.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks.